let's go into like more general Purescript kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So, like, do you have any experience? Because I talked about it with Christoph and maybe some of the other people, like on the podcast last week, and some other people in general. So you said you're using React at work right now at Awake, right?
That's right.
Do you only have Purescript as a there, or do you have any other like? Do you have some JavaScript code as well, or is it 100% Purescript?
Yeah, there's some JavaScript. It was initially a JavaScript
Mm-hmm.
application. I think this is really, really common. This is probably the main way that Purescript gets going at companies is to incrementally take over an
Mm-hmm.
application, which actually led me to write that article about replacing React components with Purescript,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is actually surprisingly by far the most popular article on my site by like a factor of 10 or something. Which is from our experience at Awake, which is just incrementally taking over more and more and more of a React application. And at this point, it's mostly, I mean, all the JavaScript is legacy at this point, or
Mm-hmm.
is considered that way. So everything has been written in PureScript for the last two or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such a big JavaScript app before that that there's still some JavaScript hanging around.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like your experience so far has been that you can definitely uh, like do a step-by-step migration from like a React application to
Oh,
a.
yes, absolutely. And even more so than like I feel like this was an argument for React's adoption in the first place was like just give React a DOM node and it can just handle itself right there and then you can sort
Mhm.
of incrementally, keep introducing it. And the same is true of Halogen. You can do that with applications. The
Mhm.
same is also true of like Elm. You can do that with like to introduce Elm to something. But what really sets PureScript and React apart is that because you're using the same library under the hood, if you're taking over a PureScript, if you're taking over a React application
Mhm.
with PureScript React, in that case, because you're using the same underlying library, you can really mesh that so much more. It's not just taking over a DOM node with PureScript. And we have like part of our Redux store, like our global state,
Mhm.
part of that is written in JavaScript and part of it's written in PureScript. So we're constantly back and forth. There's like JavaScript calling PureScript, which calls JavaScript, which calls PureScript. I mean, you can really intermix it to a fine degree. Not that you maybe want to per se,
But you can.
but PureScript makes it really nice. I mean, it's like it almost ends up just coming down to imports. Like, are you importing from the output slash some PureScript module, or are you importing from the JavaScript module? And like, otherwise, you write normal JavaScript code and you write normal PureScript code. It really doesn't feel like a hodgepodge of. It doesn't feel that messy. It actually feels pretty nice
Yeah, and I
to
guess
do
that's
it
a
that way.
testament to the like awesome FFI that PureScript has, and the fact that
Yeah,
the result in JavaScript is as simple as it can probably be, as far as wrapping a
yeah,
language like PureScript in JavaScript, right?
yeah. It like is so astounding to me, like over and over again, how well you can do that. How well you can mix in PureScript with like a huge, messy JavaScript application, and it makes the JavaScript better because when you start to control um, some of these modules in PureScript and you make a change elsewhere in your PureScript,
Yeah.
like now that compiler helping you out starts to get into the JavaScript too, because the JavaScript is importing PureScript modules that are compiler checked.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I'm maybe not the right person to ask because I'm so biased, but I definitely recommend taking over your React application with PureScript, and you can do it in a really, really flexible way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That also has been my experience. That I was going from Angular to Halogen, right? So it wasn't even close to the same thing, right? And it was still, it
Yeah,
didn't feel like it definitely felt like I could easily like pass data around, pass functions around between Halogen
yeah,
and Angular, and like intermix them however I felt like was needed. So
totally.
and let's see, people in saying KRDVR is in chat saying I'm so tempted to try now. You definitely should.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
I mean, if as so long as like your company culture, is amenable to that.
oh yeah,
But
uh,
otherwise, absolutely.
yeah. That's the big thing, right? Because technically I
Yeah.
was able to do that at my previous company, but as soon as I left for a full-time Haskell job, they kind of stopped using PureScript because the company culture, I guess, was not like they didn't buy into FP quite as much as I did. So
Yeah. So to the total opposite happened at CitizenNet. CitizenNet was not an FP company whatsoever. They have like machine learning stuff, and they're very Python based, and like very traditionally so, Python 2, object oriented, that kind of thing. And then this like sort of rogue team started doing Purescript and Halogen on the front end, and that's like totally taken things over. Like now there's like multiple front end applications in the company, like different systems, like microservices that are all in Purescript front end, but also it's been taking over a bunch of back end stuff. So now I've got Purescript on the back end, servers running, and all kinds of stuff. So
cool.
it can go either way.
Yep, sure. That sounds promising. So let's see. Okay. People are having a let's see. So, what are your thoughts on the current state of the Purescript DCE and bundling?
I think it could be quite a bit better. It certainly works. I mean, it's adequate, and the bundle sizes are not like enormous or anything like that, but there's certainly like a lot of room for improvement there, especially if you compare Purescript to something like Elm. Elm does a really, really great job of this. That said, when we are able to transition to ES modules, which is coming up next compiler release probably, that opens up a few more opportunities to take advantage of JavaScript tools for this. And it's something that's hard to compete with. Like, and we emit JavaScript, and so the JavaScript tools are the number of man hours put into them, and like making that as efficient as possible. I think our best bet is probably to piggyback on that, to do as much DCE on the Purescript side as we can, and then once it's JavaScript, defer to the JavaScript tools, whatever the best of the best is at the time, and let that do it. But a lot of those depend on ES modules to be at their best. So currently, I think the biggest thing that is a limitation for Purescript is not having those.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's already been implemented. It's just not been in this. It's just not in this next compiler release because it's such a big change.
Yeah.
So in this next release, it's a warning for things in the FFI that won't be compatible with ES modules, but it's already implemented to go in the next compiler release. So
cool.
Coming up.
So yeah, and then I wonder if that will yield Zephyr useless. Maybe. I mean, not useless, but
Zephyr's
maybe...
on the.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Zephyr's on the Purescript side. So
exactly.
There's still a place for Zephyr before it ends up getting to compiling and outputting JavaScript. If anything reduces the need for Zephyr or eliminates the need for Zephyr, it will be the same or equivalent functionality moving into the compiler instead, which is probably the best place for it anyways. So that we can do better like dead code elimination on the Purescript itself before passing it off to the JavaScript tools.
Yeah, interesting. But again, like I've seen core contributors being very careful about not moving too much of that into the compiler because it makes it harder to maintain, right? And if there's other tools that can do any of that, then just use the other tools, right? So we'll see with that. And
we'll see. I don't think Zephyr's going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, probably not.
But yeah, I think there's room for there to be like DCE tools and so on both sides. Like while it's Purescript, before it gets compiled, and then after it's JavaScript, another pass with a JavaScript tool.
So I think there's so Andy was asking more about ES modules, but I'm pretty sure there's an issue on the Purescript compiler repository. I can look it up after or later or something.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know too much about that myself, so I might have already said basically all I know. But yeah, there's some issues on the compiler that have a lot of detail on it.
Yeah. So Vince started. I think Vince was one of the first people who started this conversation, VS6 modules, because I think he has a very, very old PR about that. And I think someone else took over, and a few years ago. Yeah, exactly. It's been a long time.
It's taken its sweet time.
Yep. Okay, cool. So let's see. So yeah, you mentioned this before, but like pro-functor optics. So what drove you to? Because you have this pro-functor optics article right on your website. So
Yeah.
what drove you to write this article? Was it did you need to like train somebody at work, or did you just want to learn more yourself, or like what was the driver for this? And I'm pasting it in
Yeah,
chat.
we one, they're just fascinating and they're just really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're really, really useful as well. And it's something that I've wanted to know better. And we started to use, or when I joined Awake, we use them a lot. We've all of our like APIs or code
Mm-hmm.
gens and everything. And then we have like lenses that operate on that. And I just wanted to get a better handle on what they were doing. But I also, every time I'd like tried to use lenses, I just get so deep into like, you know, crazy theory, and like I just could not wrap my head around it. And I think what it, I think it was Sandy McGuire actually might have been.
Mm-hmm.
I saw like a lens post on the Haskell subreddit, and I think it was him who made a comment that was like, "Here's like the four things you need to know. Like, this is what a lens is. This is what a prism is. This is what a traversal is." And I was like, "Wow! Like, you can just distill it down to like this core set of really practical lenses, like
Mm-hmm.
ones that you're actually likely to use day to day, super workhorse ones. If you know that and you know how to compose them, like that gets you so far. You don't need to know about like the shop profunctor. Like you don't need to know all that stuff. It's nice and it's really
Mm-hmm.
important, but to use it as a practitioner, it's not necessary. And so I wanted something that could get you up and running as a practitioner. And it was initially meant to be a very short post. I don't know, like a couple hundred words. Just I don't know. It's supposed to be short. But as soon as I tried to like explain those sentences a little bit longer, like a prism is just X, I ended up it just got out of control. And so now there's a pretty long article.
Oh yeah.
But I think it does a good job of breaking down how to use these in practice and how to think about them.
Yep,
The
for
cheat
sure.
sheet is basically what it was originally.
So the idea was okay. Let's do the cheat sheet first, and then you just figure out that you need a lot. Like you'd like to say a lot
Yeah.
more, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
That total instance of writing a little bit and realizing like I don't know what I'm talking about. And and so I learned a ton as I wrote this. But I think that this is a really nice way if you're not very familiar with lenses to get enough of a grip on them to be very useful in day-to-day work.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really get into the theory whatsoever or anything like that.
Cool. Do you have any idea, again, a personal curiosity here, how much it took you to write
Yeah.
all of this?
Like how long?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure in terms of hours. Pretty much any article that goes on the site, I'll work on it for probably 1 to 2 weeks, but it's a hour a day maybe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I luckily had a nice long plane ride, like a 6 hour plane ride. And so a big chunk of it was that. It probably took like 20 hours in total to
Okay.
put together. But there's like an editing pass where I have a few people who I like to ask to proofread.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll sort of go into review and they can comment. Jordan Martinez was super helpful with this one, making it more approachable if you like had never even heard of lenses. Like, why would you even use these things? So he's just such an asset to the community. Just
Oh yeah.
such a helpful person.
Yeah, definitely. Like having spent so much time doing the like his like the documentation repositories and all the cookbook and all of that.
Yeah,
It's a huge asset to the community for sure. Having having those repositories.
yeah, for free. Crazy.
Yeah, so much work has gone into them. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, so then let's get into the like the recent news. I think we also I mentioned it in the beginning, but yeah, let's mention it again because we have a lot more people watching right now. So you were recently added as a core member to the like a core contributor, right, to the Purescript repository. Right? So how do you feel about that? I want to go over that again for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So recently joined the core team, and I feel very honored, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. Especially given like the technical caliber alone of people on that team, like Nathan and Nicholas, who's here in chat, and Harry and everybody. And so it's a really big honor, and My focus is definitely mostly on the Purescript community itself, more so than the compiler. And
Hmm.
so I'm mostly joining to focus on things like documentation across libraries, making sure that all the as many as at least of the core libraries as possible are documented, tested, accessible to users, but also to people who want to get involved as contributors.
Hmm.
But as well to things like learning resources and try Purescript and just to basically be the community like maintainer of sorts.
Hmm.
So much less focused on the compiler and a lot more on like how do we make the paper cuts of using Purescript less present, and so
Hmm.
that you can maybe make it a little bit easier for newcomers to Purescript to like know what build tools to use and like how do I get started with the project and start learning and like have a really pleasant experience of using the language, because the language itself is so lovely to use.
Oh yeah.
But there's still a lot of like low hanging fruit as far as the community resources. So that's I'm really honored to join, and that's what I see as my responsibility. Something that I'm definitely working on with Jordan Martinez, who
Hmm.
also just joined the core team,
Yep.
and so both of us are working on that
Oh yeah.
pretty heavily.
Let me switch back. Yeah, there we go. We're back. Cool. Yep, definitely. That's I love that everybody. Wait, what is the process of joining the team? Yeah. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so there's the Purescript organization has a governance repository which
Mm-hmm.
has some more details on what the core team's responsibilities are and like the process for joining and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, my best understanding is that current members of the core team from time to time will get together and nominate people that they'd like to join, and
Mm-hmm.
those people are invited to join, and if they agree, then they're they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a pretty, just as with Purescript in general, it's a pretty I don't know, casual kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few like formal obligations or processes, and it also doesn't mean it doesn't like come with a lot of power per se to do things, but uh, it gets you in a nice like I don't know the word for it, like emotional position of contributing to a lot of core resources in the
Mm-hmm.
community. So if you're interested in joining the core team, the biggest thing is just actively contributing to core resources over a long period of time that shows that you're dedicated, is like pretty much the way in.
Yep.
But once you're in the core team, as far as I can tell, you're basically doing the same thing as you were doing before. Uh,
Yeah. Again,
just
like
maybe across a few more repositories.
yeah. I mean, you can definitely do pretty much. Like you can open issues, you can open PRs, you can propose changes, you can make the change that you want to see there, and so on, right? Even as
Yeah,
even without being part of the core team, right? There's no
yeah.
thing where if you're not part of the core team, you cannot contribute to the compiler or to any library or anything like that. So
Yeah, a huge amount of that stuff is driven outside the core team. There's actually an organization called Purescript Contributors.
mm-hmm.
That's like Purescript Contrib on GitHub, which is a really great place to get started contributing to things that are adjacent to the core team. So it's not the core libraries, but it's libraries like AF and the React bindings, so
Mm-hmm.
some pretty big ones. And that's one that Jordan and myself and Miles Frayne and Gary Burgess and others maintain.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a bunch of open like help wanted issues at the moment across repositories. A lot of them are documentation related ones that are pretty easy to take on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to get started moving in that direction. And it gets you access. One of the big benefits of doing that is it gets you access to the current maintainers of that organization to like respond to your PRs and help you out with them. And those can be a really good learning experience. It's how I learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
initially.
Cool. Um, so yeah, do you have it? So let's see. So since we got into this, do you have any projects, like any repositories within Contrib or within the main Purescript organization, which stand out to you as, hey, this would probably need some love in sense of either some documentation or even some features or anything like that?
Hmm. As far as a library that stands out in particular, I wouldn't say any libraries definitely stand out. One that I would have said would be machines, PureScript machines.
Mm-hmm.
But Pala is and uh, MHM Danis. I'm not sure the right way to say that, but they're working on new documentation for it, so that one may be not the best. But there's a Purescript contrib governance repository that talks about how to get involved, and it's also got a link that you can click. It's an issue filter that's good first issues and help wanted issues across the whole organization.
Okay.
Which is a nice way to say like, okay, maybe one of these appeals to me that I can take on.
Paolo said, "I'm the worst maintainer in our small community." Oh, I'm sure that's not true.
Yeah, that's definitely not true. I very much appreciate that you're working on the new docs.
Actually, he mentioned that, and I think he mentioned that. Yeah, I think I replied that I'd be interested in helping. So yeah, I'll get back to you, Paolo, for sure, because machines sound interesting to me. I've used it. I played with it cool. In Haskell, not used it, but
it's used to implement the Halogen virtual DOM.
Oh, really? I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, that's all based on machines. So yeah, the whole virtual DOM, which is all in Purescript, ultimately basically comes down to using these machines to represent the DOM, which is cool.
Yep,
it's not what I would have expected, but yeah.
Okay.
So there's going to be a more like, I don't know, wide announcement. We're definitely looking to expand the Purescript contributors organization and have a few more people involved in helping with these libraries. If anybody's interested in that, definitely just keep an eye on Discourse. That's where we'll be posting everything.
Cool.
But that's a lot of opportunities there to get involved if you'd like to contribute a little bit.
Yeah. And give back to the great community that we're all part of. Yep, for sure. Help, because basically the thing, it seems to me and I think you started pretty much similarly to what I did 2017. That's also when I kind of got involved into the community, right?
Summer 2017.
Yeah, something like that, right? And it feels a lot like it's kind of like a generational thing, right? Even if the generations are very short, right? And then maybe a few years later, we were kind of working we had the help of Nate and all of the awesome core contributors and people who have been in the community for way longer than we have been, but it also feels like, okay, we kind of feels like at least for me, and I'm sure it also feels the same for you, kind of want to give back to maybe the people who are joining now, right? Let's make it even easier for them. Let's add more documentation. Let's add, because there's more of us, right? Back when we joined, there were a lot fewer people doing Purescript, right? So they did what they could with the limited amount of time and resources that they had, right? But now there's more of us. Right. We can do more repositories, more libraries, more documentation, more examples, more content, more everything, right? And make it even easier. So,
yeah, and that's one of the big aims of the contributors organization, is to help. I don't know if organize is the right word, but to help direct that, because it can be really difficult to just say today, I'm going to write all the documentation for half. No, you're not. That's a huge, it's a huge undertaking, and it can take some guidance. It can take some mentorship. A lot of the difficulty in maintaining libraries like the contributors ones, or just across Purescript, is that pull requests can often take so much effort to review that it kind of diminishes the value of the pull requests, because it's you got so many things vying for your attention, and the maintainer attention is the currency that is short. And so an organization like contributors, one of the goals is to streamline that a little bit. One, to get more maintainers involved in reviewing these things, but also to help people make their contributions and make sure that those contributions that they make actually get merged and actually get looked at. And that comes down to things like making sure that the goal of the library is even stated, so that you know what sort of contributions are welcome. Making sure that issues are labeled like help wanted, knowing that if I take this on, they already are expecting it. It's not I'm not just adding a feature that I think would be good, but it's something that I've proposed or somebody else has proposed that they want, and that I now feel very comfortable adding.
Or even the maintainers currently working on it without right? You kind of I know that if I start working on this, it's nobody else will have a peer. I'm not wasting time, right? Because somebody else is working on it, hopefully. So
right. Yeah. And so over time, I'm hoping that this organization will grow and be not just a place to have people contribute and everything, but also a place to make friends and have a community of people who are actively giving back. And that includes people who, serve as mentors in that group, as saying like, this is what like a really great PR looks like. And this is what, like how you even understand some of these libraries, or let me work on documentation with you. Because a lot of working and contributing can be pretty lonely. Like if you are just sort of pushing code out into the ether and everything, like, and you don't actually work with somebody on it, sometimes that can get a bit lonely. And something that I've really, really valued, just coming back to the community of Purescript, is being able to pop into like the Purescript Slack and be like, hey, I'm trying to work on this. I have no idea what I'm doing. And like a couple people come in and help out. It's such a better experience for me. Versus just kind of trudging on by myself and hoping it gets merged.
Yeah, and this is something
so
that
I'm hoping it can serve that.
This is something that Christoph was also saying last week, right? When he was saying that, hey, he basically knew some Haskell, and then he found Purescript, he thought it was interesting, and he tried doing a PR, and then like Gary helped him with I think it was some parsing issue or something like that he was trying to fix.
Yeah.
And it was like he said, okay, I'm sure that Gary could have instead closed my PR, opened his own PR, fixed it like 10 times in the time that he spent teaching me how to actually make that PR, right? But then in the long run, like Christoph is now part of the like a core contributor and has like done a lot of contributions, right? So it's definitely pays off like at least sometimes, right? Being helping people out, right? You get you get people that can maintain and can do more PRs and can help and so on, right? And that's definitely.
And even over and above that, I mean, I've had the great delight of making a lot of friends in the community that way. Maybe initially I was just stealing ideas from your Halogen template, repository, Vlad, but afterwards we came to be friends, and I think that's a really valuable part of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've like, and it's not only like, and I think this happens to a lot of the people in the community, right? Because you end up having some conversations on the channel, but then you make friends with some people, and then you start having private conversations and chatting with people, and that's one of the awesome things in the community.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's see. Do you have plans for the future? Let's start looking forward, right? So you've already mentioned the formless hooks library that you're working on, right?
Yep, that's right.
Right. So any other plans for the future? Or do you want to say more about that or anything else?
Yeah. Let's see. Plans. So my immediate plans right now are focused on the community stuff. So I spent a lot of time on hooks this year. There was like the setup Purescript, like GitHub Actions related work. And so I've done some good coding work, but kind of for the next few months, I'm really focused on helping with like the transition to 0.14 of the compiler and cleaning up some libraries and documentation and learning resources. And that's very much like the focus going forward. Okay. That said, I don't know. Sometimes you just get an idea and you gotta run with it. So I may get distracted with a new library. We'll just have to see.
Okay, so no clear. Like other than that, no clear plans, right? You're just doing one thing at a time, basically, right? And then you'll get a new idea.
one thing at a time. Right now, there's an ongoing effort to update all of the Purescript contributor libraries, tests, documentation, so on. Anybody who wants to get involved, please feel free. There's a lot of help wanted issues on it. Once that's done, that's like a big moment to step back and say like, what are some of the big things that we can do to make the experience of Purescript nicer? And that's really what I want to be my main goal going forward for at least several months. So it's stuff I'm interested in talking with people about on Discourse, but also if anybody who's watching right now is interested in shooting me an email to chat about things, if they've got ideas or whatever, I would love to hear them. But that's going to be the main focus for me going forward.
Well, I'll give you one idea right now that I've been that I'm currently working on is I was surprised because last week I was like we were doing I started by doing Purescript weekly where we look at Purescript news, but then the community is not that big that we have a lot of news every week, so I decided to do weeks every other news every other week and then do whatever else in Purescript in between, right?
Yeah.
And then last week it was the in-between kind of thing. And I was like, okay, what should we do now? And I just started building an in-memory database in Purescript backend style, just
Mm.
because, just something. And I tried my best to do it in a way that it uses basic Purescript code rather than I don't know, rather than using recursion schemes or to build a
Oh
simple
yeah, yeah.
DSL, whatever. Just okay, let's use lists. Let's make it simple. I didn't even use maps initially. I just used a list of tuples as key values and just showcasing how you can do pattern match on list and like write simple recursive functions on list and so on. Right, just because it was like okay,
Yeah.
let's do very very basic code. And it's like compared to my other videos that got a ton of views, right? So it seems like people are interested in seeing okay, how does Purescript, like simple Purescript code looks like rather than things that
Yeah.
are complicated. So that's like people seem to love learning by example. So
Yes,
that's a
absolutely.
big thing.
That's why one thing that you've been contributing to, that I've seen some of your streams on it, the Purescript cookbook is kind of a nice sort of new addition of like, here's just like a little bit of Purescript code that does something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's not like real world how like here's like a multi-thousand line good luck sort of application. But that's a really nice one. But I agree with you that over and above that, the need for learning resources around Purescript is pretty. I don't know. It's like I don't want to say crisis or anything, but like it's just very difficult. I mean, you got to be a trooper to get through.
Oh yeah.
And it's not like my immediate focus at the moment, but it's such like when people write blog posts and it's just like here's how you do fairly simple X in Purescript. I mean, those things are awesome. I mean, my react like sure my Profunctor Optics article exists, but it's the like much simpler like here's how you take a React component and just switch it to Purescript is like significantly more popular. And I think it's probably been helpful, like been more helpful to people in general, in total, because those sorts of things like they maybe start to get obvious as you get deeper into Purescript, but they're really not like at first.
Definitely
Not at all. And there's just kind of there's like weird gap. It's like you learn Purescript, you know what the basic things are, and then it's like nothing. You kind of like
Yeah,
you got to figure it out
and
now.
again, like you were saying earlier, the cookbook, right? So I bet a lot more people will look into the cookbook to see how a React like a simple React application looks like, or a simple React hook looks like, and then only the people who buy into that and say, okay, that's interesting, would benefit from the React Halogen, like or React, real world Halogen or real world React or whatever, right? Because like you first need to like you won't like a lot fewer people will buy into these few thousand lines repository rather than okay, I want a 100-line example, right? Let's start with that, and not even mentioning that in order to get that you need a 1600 page tome of Haskell book or whatever.
It's absurd,
that, right? So,
do you have any examples that you were thinking of when you said that about like simple examples?
So I think all sorts of things, and I think it's good to have like you're saying, okay, it's great to have repositories that have examples within them, right? But it's also like some people learn better by video, and I'm trying to do my part there and like upload parts of it to YouTube and so on. And maybe other people want articles, and I don't have as much time as I used to because I do spend the significant part of my daily free time to do the streams, right? But then maybe some other people could work on writing blog posts, or some other people prefer reading rather than watching, and maybe I don't know, maybe we'll try to do like some of these shows in podcast form as well, because right now there's also video, right? So maybe I'll try uploading them as audio only for people who want to listen on the go about things about Purescript and about FP and so on, right? So I think it's also important to diversify, right? The ways you can read and learn and like get involved and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't have any better examples right now, but I think and if other people, because I think there's a few people who also stream right now in my channel, right? So like if you want to help, definitely try to do your own like beginner content, and it's also like it also helps your channel, because this is things that are interesting for most people, right? Yeah, like learning, like first look at or even second look at, but things like that.
I still find content that almost seems geared towards beginners, but often like if somebody really experienced doing something beginner in Purescript, you'll just pick up so many things from it, where I still watch some of those things from time to time and get a ton of value from it, Um, even something like Nathan Fabian has a talk on code reuse
Mm-hmm.
in Purescript,
Yep.
and he's basically going through like very simple, like, why would you even make something polymorphic? Like, what is that? What's the point? What does that mean? Why? And it's all like very motivated examples, and it's a wonderful talk. And I saw it when I was already like very experienced with Purescript at that time, and it's just like there's so many gems from returning to some of that,
Oh
like,
yeah.
maybe so-called beginner oriented content,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe early intermediate content that is so valuable. It's not like you're just restricting yourself to beginners in that case. You're really not, because the value extends quite far up into the
Mm-hmm.
skill development.
Oh yeah, definitely. I literally remember watching that, and I was definitely not a beginner anymore. And I think the best way I can describe that is, you know how you have some like things in your head that you're going to, okay, if that happens, I'll do this. If like I usually structure
Yeah.
code kind of like this and that, and I think I called it those like maybe instances of where like, well, or maybe if that, then you do that, right? And I think like watching
Yeah.
that video kind of collapsed maybe 5 different instances of things into a single thing, right? Because, oh right, that's the same
Hmm.
thing, right? But like since Nate was like
Yeah.
explaining and watching from like a different level, right? So like, oh, okay, right. That's way simpler to think about all of these things being similar. I don't even remember exactly what it was right now, but I think I had a whoa, okay, cool, right? Even
Yeah.
though I kind of
Totally.
knew all of those things separately, I didn't think of them as being an instance of the same thing, right? I don't even remember what. I need to rewatch it and see what it was.
No, totally. And there's like, I mean, there's beginner content written by someone who's intermediate, which is
Mm-hmm.
really valuable because you're closer to
Mm-hmm.
that part. You have like more empathy and more understanding,
Mm-hmm.
which can make those resources more valuable if you are not super expert before you write it. Um, One of my favorite authors is Michael Pollan, and that's like very much his approach to writing
Mm-hmm.
is, before I've learned too much, like that's when I have to write. Because once I've learned too much, like I no longer have that like curiosity and connection that I had. But then there's also the like someone who's truly expert explaining something almost beginner or getting
Mm-hmm.
started, and the way that they explain it and their understanding of it can just be very enlightening. It reminds me of I started boxing several years ago, and like when someone who's just really expert just will like tell you about or like show you like how they're experiencing a
Mm-hmm.
movement or how they're like viewing something, and you're like, oh my god, like the way that you're seeing this is totally not what I would have expected. But now that I see it, it like unifies like 7 different pieces of knowledge that
Mm-hmm.
I was like thinking of individually, but now they're all like one actual concept for me,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's incredibly valuable as well.
Yeah,
So simple
definitely.
content, we need it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And also like that reminds me. So I think maybe just some people, even if they're experts, they have a very they retain a very good understanding um of what it is to be a beginner or how you should explain things to them, right? Because I also remember the what was it? I think so. The title of the video is very misleading because it's not actually what the talk is about, but it's also Nate who's talking about free and co-free, and I think that title is something about halogen and
Oh
like halogen dome, something that has absolutely no connection to that. But
yeah,
he goes into, oh, by the way, let me
it's
explain what,
free
yeah,
from tree.
something, yeah, okay, something like that, and then
Yeah,
yeah,
free from
it's
tree and the halogen VDOM,
yeah,
but
yes, it's more, yeah, but to
it's not
me,
about the halogen
yeah,
VDOM.
yes. So me, it's like, okay, I watched that, and since I watched that, I now think that free and co-free are trivial things that you can explain to beginners, which I would have never guessed
Totally.
before, right? It's like
Yeah.
in most books, and it's like I think that I've gone with Chris Penner a couple of weeks ago or something over this, right? So we found a like okay, this is a ranking of FP concepts on like this is simple, this is intermediate, this is whatever, right? And co-monads or co-free was somewhere way like the super advanced section. I
Yeah.
was like, why? Like that's like co-free is not that hard, right? You can, but again,
Yeah.
it's because I was biased into, okay, that's how I explain it, that's how I've been explaining it to other people, the way Nate does, and like, okay, that's very simple. But yeah, it's it's only because of that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing like how many of these concepts end up like if you can just approach it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's almost like, what? That's the whole thing? That's it?
I could have came up with
That's
that,
what I've been
right?
worried about for this whole time. Yeah, like you almost like would come out. You'd almost be like
Mm-hmm.
forced to come up with
Yeah.
it. Um, and you're like, oh, like somebody's formalized this whole thing, but really, like it could be explained in very simple language. But I think it takes takes a gift to have that explanatory power. Maybe not a gift, but it's certainly a skill. Something that I strive towards, but ooh, it's tough.
Oh yeah.
It's really, really tough to do well.
Yeah. And I think like another thing, sorry to keep, but I think like Gabriel is also a person who's because I've watched the Awake Security like the
Oh yeah, the live
streams,
stream.
right? Yeah, and also it's like
Yeah.
he seems to try to make things usually most of the time at least to keep things simple for like beginner friendly. But again, even if I'm like I've done a lot of Haskell in the past couple of years, I still always learn something from watching one of his streams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess one takeaway from that is if you're watching this and you're like very expert even or not so much, either way, like that simple content ends up being so valuable to, I mean, like me and you are watching what's ostensibly very simple content and like being like, what? So
Yeah.
yeah, just so valuable.
Like we might be getting we're obviously getting other things than the beginners get, right? Because beginners would look at some other things and they'd be like, "Ooh, wait, that's
Yeah.
a cool thing that he did there," and at the very least, a cool way to explain something, if not something for yourself specifically, right? Which is also very important. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay, cool. Well, I guess we can approach like closing thoughts and wrapping it up, right?
Yeah,
'Cause I think
absolutely.
it's almost been 2 hours, so.
Yeah, it's been such a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely love to hear any closing thoughts that you have, or if I don't know if you usually do like a Q&A or anything.
Well, yeah, definitely. So while we do this, I'm going to encourage chat to, if you have any other questions that you haven't asked because you're waiting for a different topic or whatever, then this is the time because there's
When are they gonna say it?
we're not gonna say whatever it is. Again, if I missed any questions, so if you asked something that I didn't ask, Tom, then just repeat it right now because. Okay, so I actually did see that. So Vince asked whether we need a mascot because he could dress up in a Purescript outfit once in a while, just to be part of the core team.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, there has to be an audition, obviously. So we're gonna require a video first, a video submission. You can choose the song, any song you like,
Oh yeah,
but you have to be wearing full costume.
and they'll watch it
But
on
I'm
stream,
looking
of
forward
course.
to it. Yeah, it has to be done. It has to be done live, obviously.
Okay, cool. So yeah, other than that, I don't know. Like I'm really, again, if anything is can be a closing thought to this stream is, I'll say it in the post. Look out for it. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward. It's just like the again. It's just how much how awesome the community is and how much I'm very excited about all the new developments, the new core team members, the like contributors organization that you've mentioned that also sounds like it's going to
Yeah.
getting through a I'm not gonna say overhaul because but yeah, just yeah, it sounds like it's going in the right direction, at least according as far as I can tell. So I'm very happy about all the things that I've been seeing lately.
Yeah, yeah, me as well. There's definitely some great momentum. There've been a lot of people joining the community kind of haven't seen before who are in the Purescript chat and everything, and I feel like there's just such a real sense of excitement among people who start using Purescript in the first place and have their first experience with the language. But it's one that also continues as, I mean, you and I are still really excited about this language, and you even mentioned there's like the generation before us, like the
Yeah.
elders basically.
Which we don't even know, but I bet all of those are also split because Christoph was saying about how Gary B has been there since forever and he learned from him, right? But yeah, but for us, like Christoph has been there forever as well, right? So it's
yeah.
even
I didn't even
the
realize that there
elders
was
have been are in multiple generations or yeah.
Yeah, and that excitement continues, and it's such a testament to what a pleasure it is to use this language. And so I'm so enthusiastic and optimistic about the future of Purescript and the community. And so so excited to be joining the core team and to be just working on like community resources. And I think there's going to be so many opportunities in the coming months for people to join in with that, which is just a great way to get more involved with the so many smart and friendly and just warm people who are in the community. So I definitely like, I don't know, stay tuned for Purescript over the next year or two. It's some really exciting stuff ahead.
Cool. So Palu has a question: does the core team has like internal meetups planning, or do you discuss everything in the public?
There's some like internal communication, but it's all like, it's the kind of stuff that wouldn't really like make sense to do in public. Like, when are you free? Like that kind of stuff. And the important discussions, like, it's very much like a principle of the core team, and something that they said right away on joining, that those discussions are public. So not everything is public, but anything that like is going to like affect the, the community widely or anything like that is done in public, largely with compiler issues or milestones, just because it's the core of the language. But there's also the governance repository where maybe some more discussions will happen as well.
Okay, cool. So let's see. Like Vince also saying that industry putting Purescript in use more and more has been great to see. Yeah, it feels like there's more and more companies using Purescript out there.
Yeah, and it's really also cool seeing companies who gambled on Purescript, like CitizenNet. I mean, took a big gamble on Purescript and hired up a whole team and everything. And now like Hardy Jones on the core team, he works there. It's just continued to grow and grow there. And so it's not just that you see like new companies using it, but established companies doubling down, going further. I mean, Awake Security gambled on Purescript, and now like any JavaScript is just legacy. I mean, that's a real success story for Purescript and a very fast moving startup in cybersecurity where you kind of don't have that much room for error. So definitely, in addition to seeing it used more, you also have such good success stories from companies that have been using it now for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like Vint is saying like 3-4 years ago it was 4 or 5 companies. I'm not sure because I wasn't here that long ago, I think, but it definitely feels like there's a lot more. But I think there's a lot more than we know, because I think there's there's the public community which joins Slack and so on. But I'm fairly sure there's quite a few people who use Purescript without like joining the community, or like at least officially, right? Not chatting in Slack. And then there's like maybe one member of the team who's in Slack, but then there's like 5 others who are not as public or as
totally.
Yeah.
There's, for example, like I've had multiple recruiters reach out to me who are from, I had never heard of the company. I don't know anybody at the company, like not involved in the community at all, but big Purescript users. Or there's like a big like Japanese community of Purescript users.
Okay.
Like cool. That's my second highest, referring traffic to my site is from Japan. And me being English language only, I'm sure there's a lot of that I'm missing. And so I do think that the number of companies using it, if you look at who's active in the community companies, that's definitely just a small portion of the overall.
Yeah,
I don't know how many there are.
Yeah, of course. I don't think we can know, but
it's definitely going up though. Like I've definitely noticed since 2017 when you and I started getting active, there's definitely been uptick in growth. Manning has been like considering publishing a book on Purescript, which is kind of like a mark of maturity for sure. So there's a lot of signs that it's the growth is continuing.
Yep. Okay. Well, yeah, it's already been 2 hours and I feel bad about keeping you for so long. So
yeah, as I was saying before the call, we're about to go adopt some kittens. So we got to get over there.
Okay.
But thank you so much for having me on. Yeah. This is a great time. Good to chat with you.
It's great finally being able to chat with you, like to see you at least, and use voice to chat. And yeah, we should right. do this again sometime.
Yeah, I would love to. I feel so pro, like I'm up on this beautiful podcast Sundays background. I feel like I'm on like a talk show or something. Very professional.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, yeah, again, thank you, and I'll catch you next time then.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. See ya.
Bye bye.